Hello and welcome back to the course. Today we'll be going over one of the final little refactors we plan on doing before we start adding some more to the game. And that will be going over our movement code a little bit and making it feel a little bit less snappy by applying acceleration and deceleration. Now this should more than likely be a relatively short video compared to normal, but in a game like this our movement is a core mechanic, so it kind of needs to feel great to use. So we'll try and sink a little bit more time into this than what we would usually do. So we're going to need to move into our movement handler first to actually go and kind of modify this stuff. Now if you are like me and you just have the main scene open, the easy way of doing this is to go over to your player entity, open the scene, go to the movement handler, and then open the script for it. So this is our movement code at the moment, and somebody asked me before, why are we using delta when all we're doing is just setting our speed to this specific number? And this mostly is just a habit. And I say it's a habit because with what we're going to be doing now, you're actually going to need to apply delta to keep it kind of frame specific. So let's actually move into that and do that now. We are going to be using the same sort of functionality we used for our camera, and that is the lerp, or linear interpolation function. So we can kind of make it slowly progress towards a certain point and then, keep it at that point. Now there is an issue to this. This isn't technically the correct way of doing it. Now, I say that because technically you are always going to be permanently accelerating doing this. You're never actually going to hit the number that you want to go to. It will get close to it and then kind of keep accelerating over time. That is kind of fine for what we want. We're not doing some sort of really big game that's going to require a lot of different characters all moving at once, like hundreds of characters all moving at once. It's only going to be like maybe 10 to 20 on screen at once at max, So for now, this function's fine. So to do this, we first need to define some more exported variables for our acceleration and deceleration. So it'll be an export var for acceleration. I can't spell acceleration. There we go. Be typecasted as an int, and we'll set it equal to 0.0. I'm going to very quickly look at our movement speed and see that this is an integer at the moment. We want to turn that into a float. We'll point that at 0.0 as well. And finally, we'll do a var for our deceleration, and it will be a float, and we'll set that equal to 0.0. So we have acceleration and deceleration. Now we want to apply these correctly. To do that, we are just going to be changing the input direction, like how we're setting the speed here. So we're going to be setting the character body.velocity.x equal to the linear interpolated version of this code. And the other thing we're going to want to do is move where we handle the deceleration, but I'll go into that in a second. So first, let's write out our lerp. So we want to have the lerp function, so we want to just use lerp. We can use lerp f for this, for lerping a float, but we'll just use lerp. And then we're going to need to call, kind of pass in the arguments or parameters it requires. And it's going to require a variable that it wants to change, what it wants to change it to, and then how much it wants to change it by. So what we want is the character body 2D, or character body dot velocity dot x, and then we're going to want it to change to the negative movement speed. That's the point we want to get it to. And then we're going to want to change it by acceleration times delta. And this will basically go, okay, you want to move your character body velocity.x to this point by this amount, which will kind of lead to this, as I said, acceleration kind of feel. It'll make it a little bit more floaty. Now, we can make that as snappy as we want with settings, but it will also allow us to kind of modify and be a bit more specific with how we put things. So now we're going to do the same thing for the other direction. So we want to go lerp character body dot velocity dot x, the positive movement speed, acceleration times delta. Now that handles our acceleration. What about deceleration? Well, there's two things going wrong with deceleration right now. The first thing is this: if we are just consistently applying our deceleration here, you'll notice there's no return out of this statement. There is nothing stopping us from running the deceleration at the same time as our movement direction. So if we are trying to decelerate and move in a direction, it's going to have some weird midpoint interpolation that goes on that just sets it a bit weird for us, and we don't really want that. So to fix this, we are going to first take our handle deceleration out, and we're going to be putting it just after our if statements here. And then inside of each if statement, we're going to do one more indentation and we are going to return out of it. And what this will actually do is say, okay, I am pressing the A key, or I'm moving left, move left, and then do nothing after this code. I'm pressing the right key, move right, and then do nothing after this code. And if I'm not pressing any key, handle the deceleration. Now that does mean that there's a bit of an awkward key press thing, where if you press both keys at the same time, it's going to just kind of pick one of these and then return out and do nothing, or move in that direction, only that direction, but that's not too big of a deal. But this will kind of sort out the general movement that we're going for. Now, for deceleration, we kind of want to do the same thing, right? Where we want to do another linear interpolation, so we want to do another lerp. We want to grab the character body dot velocity dot x, and then we're going to want to move it to 0.0 because we want to move it to just 0 in general. We don't want it to be doing anything if we're decelerating, right? We want it to just go straight to 0 and stick there. So we want to do 0.0 and then pass in the deceleration and the delta. And now this is going to throw a bit of a fit in general because of this underscore here, which I use for privatizing a variable. And that pretty much handles a lot of the movement code. Now, that's the first part of this. The second part of this is actually getting it feeling right, and this is where this can take a little bit of time. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back into main. Actually, we'll go back into our player entity. And we're going to go and click on the movement handler. Now you'll see these new variables and our movement speed has reset, which is really good because if we were using 6,000 units like we were before, you would go to space or a different reality at that point. You're moving that quickly. And we don't want that. So I'm going to set this up at a really basic 100 for the movement speed, 10 for the acceleration, and 5 for the deceleration. So I want to hit max speed faster than I want to hit 0, basically. Now I'm going to go and click play. There we go. Now I'll use A and D, and you'll see if I let go of the key, my character now slides a bit, and I don't hit max speed immediately, which is kind of nice. So let's go and fix that slide a little bit. I'm going to up the acceleration to, let's say, 14-ish. And then I'll up the deceleration to, let's go, 8. Let's try that again. That's much better. It's a little less precise than what we originally had, so we can like slip off of edges and things like that. But it does lead to this a bit more, I don't know, I feel like this feels a little bit nicer. Now you'll notice that with me changing the movement code as well, the enemies here have kind of broken. They don't do anything now. And that, of course, is because their movement code has reset too. So let's go to main, go down to the patrol enemy scene, click on the movement handler, and we'll set it up. So my player's max speed right now is at 100, which means I'm going to set these guys' max speed down to, let's go, 85. Let's set the acceleration up to 6. And I'm going to leave the deceleration to 0. Now, the reason why I'm going to do that is because of how the movement handler is actually getting called for these guys. So you'll see here that in the patroller enemy, we're just grabbing the AI handler and it's handling specific states and then it's applying move and slide. Okay, let's go and check our AI handler and see how that's functioning. Well, it's checking the current state and then it's just applying movement straight away. It's handling either the left side or the right side, but there is no deceleration. It is not decelerating at all, and that is because there is no quote-unquote idle state for us to actually use here. So we're always going to be moving left or right. There is no deceleration movement. So I can leave deceleration at 0 inside of the movement handler here for this enemy. Now, we will actually be changing this in the future when we add more states, like a idle state or a wander state. And that will kind of start playing into effect probably in the next video, where we actually go through and create a much more verbose character state machine that we'll be using for both enemies and primarily the player, so we can actually start adding animations and attacks and things like that. So let's now go and change the movement handler, which we've already done. So let's press play and let's find out how this is moving. You'll see here that now there is this kind of slowdown as they hit ledges, which is really nice. It kind of makes them feel a little bit more like living creatures and not just sprites moving on a screen, and that's kind of what we want to go for. And this guy is still freaking out, but not nearly as badly. So now I'm going to go get hit by them and make sure that all of that code has, nothing's been messed with there. Yep, I'm being murdered, and there we go, we're done. But that pretty much handles how we want to handle the movement code. Now, one thing that really comes with this kind of movement handler idea is you can start really creating specific movement types. I.e., let's say if we wanted to add a flying type enemy, right? We could use a inherited version of the movement handler here, and then we can actually add two different movement, or basically just more movement direction to that player itself, or just stop giving it gravity so it can move up, down, left, and right. And then we could start making it a little bit more floaty to kind of create that thing of a character flying forward, not being able to slow down too quickly because it can't just come to a dead stop. And we can just start creating more and more types of enemies with this. And that will pretty much be handling all of our movement code, or refactoring of our movement code. In the next part of this, I would like to move into a larger character state machine, so we can actually start getting things sorted with our character properly. And then character attacks, and then after we've kind of got all of that sorted, the upgrade menu will be coming into play, and we'll be starting to use the upgrade menu and starting to kind of finalize our game loop. But yes, thank you for watching. As I said, this was pretty short. I hope you're having a good day, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you're having a great game dev journey, and I will see you in the next video.